Hello everybody, welcome back. Okay, I'm about to get real creative on you guys. I hope you like it. So, that is Frosty. That is Matcha. And I'm gonna paint with some matcha today. I got myself a Frosty, which I like to put matcha in after my little sister introduced me to the magic of putting matcha powder into Frosties. And then I went out and got me some nice cheap brushes. Got a paint palette set, professional as always, as you've come to expect. I'm gonna paint with this today. I think I'm gonna do a Japanese dragon, because why not? Yeah, I know, the Frosty's kind of melted. I've been watching TV for a little while, and do you think that's too much? Because you're wrong. Why do only some of these have caps on them? Do I not know about art? Is that my problem? Oh, God, that is like the worst sound. Oh my God. You can also tell how prepared I was to do some nice matcha tea painting because this is like as thin as printer paper pretty much. Here's my palette. I'm going to be mixing a bunch of different varieties of matcha powder in here. But I think before I do that, I should probably do the drawing. Okay, so for the first time in the history of this channel, I think I created exactly what was in my head. Woohoo! So, as you may or may not know, the traditional Japanese dragon is actually most often seen in the sea, because obviously Japan is an island, so it's pretty hard not to run into the ocean anywhere you go. I wanted to portray that, and then I also wanted to reference some traditional Japanese art. You probably know of the picture I'm referencing here, even if you don't know the name of it. The name of it is The Great Wave Off Kanagawa by Hokusai, I think. And I wanted to echo the shape of the wave over Mount Fuji, using the dragon's tail, so hopefully you can see that. Also, we do have the dragon catching a fish in his three-pronged claw. Honestly, mostly because I need to remember to make my characters interact with their surroundings. Now all I've got left to do for the sketch portion is make sure that I can actually read all of my lines clearly, because I'm going to start going over it with opaque green not paint, so as I'm finishing up here, like I said, this is a more typical Japanese dragon in a lot of ways. You can't see all of it, but typically they have a very serpentine body, they have 4 legs, they don't have wings. But then a lot of this is also just my personal stylistic decisions, so. Okay, so with that, I'm going to actually get started on mixing my paint, quote unquote. Here is my lovely little stainless steel cup filled with water. Could use plastic, decided not to. And of course, my matching stainless steel spooning utensil, half teaspoon. Oh, and by the way, please no one harass me for using delicious matcha powder as a painting medium. On second thought, if you're good at roasts, feel free. Okay, so I don't know how many of you actually drink matcha tea, but typically what you do is you put some matcha powder into a bowl, and then you will take a specialized bamboo whisk specifically meant for this and some water, and then you'll break it up and stir it around with that bamboo whisk until it is nice and smooth and there's no clumpy lumpies. Now, I don't think that I need this disclaimer, but that is a deeply simplified version. It's basically just telling you what I'm going to be doing, except I don't have my whisk, so I'm using a brush. But before I get around to that, I need to decide how much matcha I want to be using and how much water I want to be using. My first solution is going to be the most opaque of all of them. I think I'm actually going to fill up 2 palette wells with it, because I don't want to wind up running out of it, and I would rather not use more matcha than I need to for this project. So I'm going to measure out a significant quantity of matcha and plop it in the bottom here. Put just a smidge of water, and now I'm going to try and stir this. This is going to take a while. Okay, you guys, it's time for some ASMR. I hope you enjoy. Just kidding, don't leave my channel. Okay, so hopefully that's enough. I didn't completely think this through, but I know that I need to get this into here, so I'm just gonna try. Just as I finished pouring this into the first well, my camera died, and so I did an additional one while the camera was off, and then I did this, and it's just, I'll let you watch. Look, guys, no one has ever accused me of being not messy. This behavior is perfectly in line with who I am as a person. I'm gonna have a single scoop of matcha powder in here as well, because I can tell that it's going to be exceptionally effective when it comes to if and when I want to darken something even more than my super opaque wells allow. So with that, let's get painting. So I know with the painting with coffee challenge and a few of the other tea challenges and stuff, I don't think you're supposed to sketch something out beforehand. I don't think it really matters too much, but I definitely was not going to be able to form this dragon without a sketch. So if I failed that challenge, then I'm sorry. So while I was working on this, I did realize that there are a few problems that I needed to contend with. One of them is that my camera constantly overheats, so it needs some time to shut down and recoup, and usually that takes about 15 minutes or so. Now, with matcha, if it sits and it settles, then it kind of starts to go stale almost really quickly, and it's kind of difficult to get it to have that bright green color again. You can tell because I've got this really, really dark green. It actually dries okay, but when I'm first putting it on there, it feels like it's a really, really deep green. So that's the first problem with having to wait around for my camera to cool down. The second problem is that matcha settles at the bottom of the wells. So I have to keep on mixing it back up every single time, and it's not always consistent. Anyway, guys, I'm gonna let you relax and watch this for a little bit, and then I'll be back with some more observations. Another issue that you're going to run into if you try and paint with this stuff is how incredibly different the color looks when it's going on versus when it dries. Because at least with watercolor and such, you actually have a solid idea of what it's going to look like once it's dry. Not so with this. Although the final version actually wound up looking very cool, assumedly because I was only using matcha. If I had tried to mix any other paints, genuine paints with this, it probably would have looked really, really weird and maybe a little dull. But you'll see in the final version, it's actually really cool looking because it's dried, but because it's all matcha, it's got this sort of muted, almost antique-y tone to it. I really like it. I think the final version looks really cool. It better look really cool. I was up until 3:30 finishing it. Also, I was watching the new Ted Bundy movie with Zac Efron in it, and I don't recommend sitting in a dark room in a dark house that isn't your own with creaky, creaky sounds after watching things about serial killers. Also, figuring out how to render waves with matcha was a little difficult, especially to try and figure out how to best separate it from the dragon itself. I wound up using a lot more of the matcha powder directly than I thought I was going to. I kind of thought that I had put a little bit too much in there, but turns out I had just about enough. Because by mixing the powder directly with water, and only a tiny, tiny bit of water, just enough to actually make it slather on well, it functions more like ink rather than watercolor. But of course, I still used all my other wells because it wound up making it blend a lot better, and the challenge was more of paint with matcha and less of draw with it, or dust with it, or whatever. Another thing that's really cool about this is the texture of the paper. Anywhere where I heaped on a bunch of powder and then compensated for it by putting a drop or so of water on there, there's raised surfaces and edges. And frankly, if it's able to be tactile, then it should be, in my opinion. Which somehow makes it feel a little more substantial, I don't know. So remember in the beginning, I wanted to make sure that I included a reference to the Great Wave off Kanagawa. And I think in the final piece, it's at least somewhat clear. Let me know what you think. Also, if you have any drawing challenges kind of like this for me, drawing with makeup or coffee or something else, I don't know, fruit? Probably not. But if you have any other ideas for me about this kind of thing using completely non-traditional or atypical mediums, let me know. This stuff is so much fun. I don't know if you could tell. I had a blast with this. So anyway, that'll be it for me this week, but can't wait to see you guys next week. Let me know if you have any suggestions for mediums or topics or whatever for me to paint or draw. And till next time, guys.